All right, guys, welcome back to the Establish the Pass podcast presented by Clutch Points. I'm your host, Blake Lovell. With me, as always, my co-host, Dillon Reagan, back here to officially make our picks for the 2023 NFL. What is this? Is a super wild card weekend, Dillon? Is that how it's phrased? They're really getting that super in everywhere, aren't they? To let you know the Super Bowl is just around the corner. But it is, I suppose, super wild card weekend, and a lot of interesting matchups, as we sort of teased and alluded to in our previous episode. But now, Dillon, comes the point where we have to make our picks. And as we were discussing beforehand, I think we made some decent picks last year in the playoffs. If we go back to the beginning of the season, I think my Super Bowl pick is somehow still in play. When about a month ago, I said there's no chance that either of these teams are going to be in play when the playoffs get here, perhaps. Somehow they're both still in. And you picked the Bills to win. Is that right?
Yep, had the Bills winning against the 5-12 Rams.
Oh, it was the Rams. That's right. I couldn't remember if it was the Packers or the Rams. Like, well, either way, it's not going to happen probably. But your winning team is still in play, and I think you have a really good chance to secure that one. So more so than me, as we'll get to here in a second. But so that's kind of where things stand heading into it, and we'll kind of joke about that a little more when I talk about my two teams. But as always, what we will do is we'll go through our game of the week, which it's the playoffs, right? We're going to tell you why we think this is the game of the week, which you could pick a lot of these. But our betting locks, our upsets, and then our quick picks, which is only going to include one. And as you'll see when we get to it, there's a reason why this will be probably a pretty quick pick based on the matchup and the actual line heading into it. But all right, Dillon, we start with our game of the week. And again, you and I, during the season, I think we usually pick the most high-profile matchup, that makes sense. I think in this instance, what do we find the most intriguing of the playoff matchups? And we kind of talked about this in the previous episode. We're like, don't be surprised if this may actually be the most intriguing, perhaps one of the better games of the week. And that is the Chargers heading to Jacksonville to play the Jaguars. Chargers are 2-point favorites in this one. My Super Bowl pick of the Chargers. Now, it's Super Bowl representative from the AFC, not my pick to win it all. We'll get to them in a minute. But I did have the Chargers in the Super Bowl somehow. And here they are as 2-point favorites on the road against the Jags. But as for me, I'll quickly get my pick out of the way. It's time to eliminate one of my Super Bowl teams because even though they're the favorite here, I'm going to pick the Jags to win this game. You and I talked about it. Jags certainly didn't look great against the Titans. But, man, this is a team that has just found a way to win a lot of games here recently. And it hasn't always been pretty. But I really just like the way some of this sets up for the Jags. We talked about kind of the home atmosphere too there. I mean, that place is going to be rocking, a home playoff game. They've got a lot of confidence right now. I feel like, honestly, then I hate to say this, right, because you've kind of been the person that's pushed this before. This feels like one of those Chargers games to me where, they come in, you feel like maybe they're the better team here, but, I mean, you're going cross-country, I don't know. I don't know why. I think the Chargers are the better team, but I feel like this is one of those games where Jags have all the momentum, Chargers come in, Jags maybe find a way. I'm just going to go with my gut. All these are gut picks here, and even though I have the Chargers in the Super Bowl to start the season, I think I'm going to pick the Jags here. So.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Obviously, there's reasons this is the game of the week here in terms of what we're intrigued by, but also just it was the toughest pick, I think, for me to make on this whole list in terms of the Chargers are so unpredictable. They do not consistently, we just saw, they didn't have anything to play for after Baltimore lost in the morning slate in Week 18, but, just the fluctuation of their performance. Although in the second half of the year, their pass defense has been much better. As much as some Charger fans seem to be rooting for the Titans to beat the Jags and kind of wanted that matchup instead. I don't know if that was in terms of personnel and the way these teams play, if that was the best option in terms of how they still struggle to defend the run. They've addressed it somewhat, but really the strength of this team is in the secondary. When they've played passing offense, teams that kind of rely on passing the ball, which I would put Jacksonville with some of their rankings DVOA-wise in that category. It seems like a better matchup for them. They on offense, the Jags 20th in rush offense DVOA, 6th in pass offense. Whereas you look at the defense for the Chargers, they just they're 30th against the run, but they're in the top 10 against the pass. It's like it just it lines up, and I said this kind of going into their matchup earlier this season, and if you remember correctly, the Jags won 38-10 at SoFi. So I'm very concerned about my pick. I'm going with the Chargers. Maybe I'm still just leaning into that belief of the matchup being a little better indication of what the Chargers are now. I think their pass defense, again, has been in the top 2 or 3 in basically every major EPA per play category in the last basically since week 12, the last 7 weeks. There's something about the home field that scares me, but it almost feels like that reverse psychology for me with the Chargers, where now that I'm not expecting them to do something, they are going to play better. It's kind of like goes back that way. I think they're going to come out. I think Herbert's going to have a great game. It's not the Jags defense did some good things against the Titans, but the Titans, as good as Dobbs looked, are not a team that relies on throwing the ball, as we know. And Jacksonville's defense is 30th against the pass in DVOA. I just don't know if their defense can stand up, especially if Mike Williams is fine. Obviously, as we talked about in the last episode, him playing and that whole thing with the Chargers. Oh, gosh. Hopefully he's healthy enough to go, because with all their weapons, I just think maybe they have a slight edge here. But there's a reason this is our game of the week. It's probably the game that's going to come right down to the wire, and playoff debuts for both Herbert and Lawrence. It's just a lot of fun to think about what these guys are going to do for a long time, and should be, on Saturday night, potentially the best game of the weekend.
All right, well, there's an interesting stat here, Dylan, I've got pulled up before we go into the next game. The Chargers, via covers, okay? I always find some interesting trends here. So if you're looking at different betting trends and such, you can find them anywhere, but here is an interesting number I found. Chargers are 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 games in Jacksonville. They're 9-1 against the spread in the last 10 meetings between these two teams. And the favorite is 8-3 against the spread in the last 11 meetings. So, I don't know. Maybe I should go with the Chargers here to move them towards the Super Bowl. Statistically, there are some areas, as you said, Chargers seem to have an advantage. But, oh, man, this is just a very interesting setup, and that's why I think we picked the right one as the game of the week. I think this will be a lot of fun, great atmosphere, and we'll see what happens here in this one. All right, our betting locks. As we always say, in the playoffs, making your betting locks is really a hard thing to do, because it's just one that you really don't know, because they're playoff games, right? And it's hard to really feel fully confident. But you and I are gonna go in different directions here. I'm gonna go with this one. The Ravens are at the Bengals. The Bengals are 7-point favorites, so favored by a touchdown in Cincinnati. Lamar Jackson's status, Dylan, I know you'll talk about in a second, doesn't seem great for this game, and I just think the Ravens without Lamar Jackson against the Bengals on the road, in the playoffs with a Bengals team that, again, I know these two just met, right? But I don't know. I think the Bengals, and Dylan's typing this up as I'm saying it, the number has moved to 8. So assuming I think Lamar's out, I'm still going to take it. I just think the Bengals are just a better team. They're at home. They've got the momentum, and there were some hard choices to make because, like we said, right, it's the playoffs, and you've only got so many games to choose from. It's not like we have 14 to pick from here. This looked like the best of the bunch to me, although we're going to talk about one in a minute that maybe I should have considered. But I'll take the Bengals, whether it's 7 or 8. I'll take them at home against the Ravens, my betting line.
It's a shame because if Lamar, well, we'll see. Maybe Lamar will be able to play, even though the indications are that he won't. But, if he was for sure, if he's fully healthy, I mean, this could have been the game of the week. These two teams ranking higher in DVOA. Cincinnati 5th overall, Baltimore at 7th. And the thing is that it is an equalizer to an extent. The Ravens defense, as we've talked about, since they've got Roquan, since they've gotten healthier, things have kind of come together overall for that unit. They're not the reason they lost that game to Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago. They did their job. It's just been a struggle, obviously, in offense, especially if Huntley can't go. I mean, then it's just goes so slanted to Cincinnati. I would have picked the Bengals to win regardless, though, just because, as we've talked about a number of times in this podcast, I think the team's more complete than they were last year. I think they have, even with the injury to La'el Collins, their offensive line, and Alex Kappa got a little banged up. See about his availability, but their offensive line still has held up better. Joe's also been able to manage things better, and they've just had the answers to, teams kind of figured out a way to defend them. You saw even early in the season, they lose a couple games quickly, barely, but quickly with a lot of turnovers. And since then, I mean, Joe's just been just cool Joe as we know him, just absolutely dominant with all these weapons that they have. And assuming all those guys are healthy and good to go, I would have picked them regardless. And yeah, Cincinnati's defense also performing and statistically better, at least with the DVOA numbers, than last season. They're just, they're right in that top 5-6 teams in the NFL that you consider a Super Bowl contender. That, for a few minutes there in the game against Buffalo, we saw their offense moving the ball in the first drive. And obviously they beat the Chiefs. They're a team that just seems to rise to the occasion. So it's going to be a challenge against that Ravens team. Is going to be coming out hard on defense, especially. But the Bengals are too good, and I would agree. If I was betting on the spread for sure, I would go with Cincinnati to cover, even with the 8 points, especially even if Lamar does play. What is his? He's been out however many weeks. What is that going to look like? The lack of receiving weapons that people have asked for years for Baltimore to provide for Lamar. It's a tough matchup, and I think the Bengals are going to end up taking this one as a result.
All right, to your betting lock, we go to the other conference, the NFC, has the Seahawks, who, as we know, got into the playoffs in dramatic fashion in Week 18. They head to San Francisco to play the Niners. The Niners are double-digit favorites here, 10-point favorites at home. Didn't really think twice about this one, Dylan. This is another one that if you're saying confidence level, if you're putting a number on the confidence level in all these games, this will probably be in my top 2 or 3, maybe, beyond another game we'll discuss in a minute. But I don't have a lot of doubt about this one. I just think the Niners, we said, how far do the Niners get? Certainly have a lot to work with here on both sides of the ball. I mean, again, it's just that the Niners are where they are, and the Seahawks got into the playoffs, which, let's be honest, we would not have called that going into the season. But Geno Smith has a remarkable year, and I just think this is a tougher scenario going on the road here in the playoffs against the Niners. And so, yeah, I take the Niners here and not really thinking too much about it. So.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be overlooking Seattle like they almost did with the Raiders. The last half of the season, the Niners have just blown out everybody for the most part. Seattle, honestly, is the team that kept them the closest on that one Thursday night game, I believe it was. Early in the season, San Francisco cruised. But there was part of me that was, I was excited for the Lions, as we've kind of talked about in the last episode, but was maybe more curious to see what Green Bay could do, given how Green Bay had risen up. I think Seattle still, on defense, has done some things all right. But, man, San Francisco is just a buzzsaw right now on both sides of the ball. They're passing the ball insanely well, given with Brock Purdy in there and all the weapons they have. Even with guys out, it hasn't really mattered at all at certain points. Just the scheme, the line that they have, Purdy going through the progressions as if he's been around for longer than 5-6 games. It's crazy, but it is what it is. And then it's really also just comes down to the other side. Their defense is smothering. There's just no room for error really at any point. So I'm sure Seattle will come in and give them a good fight. All the odds keep moving in my favor here, man. 9.5 now on FanDuel.
Down on 9.5. Yeah.
I'll take it at 10 when I put it in here. 8.5 now for your Bengals, but
I'll take the 7 for the Bengals if that's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll use that. So yeah,
we can use the first one, but no, I'm still excited to see what this game looks like. I'm curious what the weather forecast is. We've had so much rain in California, and even if it's not raining on that day, there's a chance it's a pretty soggy field in Santa Clara. It looks like it's just supposed to be partly cloudy in the mid-50s, so hopefully pretty good conditions. I don't know if that would really help. You think with all the skill guys the Niners have, that would maybe help the Seahawks, but really with their defense, I don't know. It's going to be even tougher going against them. I just see this team coming out firing on all cylinders. I think the Niners are just going to end up kind of making a statement about who they are and who we know they are with a big win. And at least by 10, I would predict. But I'm thinking it's more of a 2-touchdown game here in San Francisco.
Yeah, weather. It's a good thing you brought that up. Talking about the games here, it looks like Jacksonville. That game is Saturday night. Is that right, Dylan?
Yep.
So Saturday night it'll be cold. It's gonna be cold in Jacksonville. Low in the 30s, so that's worth noting there. San Francisco, as you said, some rain possibly. Cincinnati looks sunny, so those are kind of the first ones here for that. Yeah, it feels like the Niners are in a good spot to win this one. All right, now to the time we get to our upsets of the week. And yes, we always have to pick one of these, so even if we may not love it, we're going to have to love these because we're going to go into these upsets, and they happen to both come from the NFC. So, Dylan, I eliminated my Chargers earlier for one half of my Super Bowl pick. I couldn't do that again. So I'm kind of what I'm doing here is I was either going to go all in on picking the Chargers and my Super Bowl representative as the winner that I picked to start the season, or I was just going to eliminate them both. I initially eliminated them both, but then I decided to flip, and I almost think now like maybe I should have swapped which ones I picked here, and just kept. I don't know. I just taken this team out and kept the Chargers. But instead, the Cowboys are 2.5-point favorites on the road against Tampa Tom and the Buccaneers. And for some reason, Dylan, I cannot let my Super Bowl pick go just yet, despite the Bucs just being downright not great for most of the season, finishing as the division champion at 8-9. Not looking like a Super Bowl team whatsoever. I've done this before. You remember when I was on the Bucs train a couple of years ago, and I'm like, they're going to find a way to win this thing, and they did. This is a completely different team. Don't ask me why I'm doing this, but I'm just not ready to let go of my Super Bowl pick just yet. And it's the Cowboys, which that may upset some people, but Dylan, we've seen this before. When it comes to the Cowboys losing games, perhaps you think they're supposed to win in this spot, and I am going to somehow, some way, pick the Bucs here in this one. I don't feel great about it, but again, we've got to pick some upsets somewhere. I picked the Jags to beat the Chargers. I'm going to go with the Bucs over the Cowboys just because I think it would be, not that I would enjoy it, but like we've seen the Cowboy meltdowns before when they lose games like this. Just as I said with the Chargers-Jags, I honestly think that Dallas is the better team. Clearly, look at the record would tell you that. But, oh, man, until I see this thing play out in another way, I'm going to take a chance, and I'm going to pick the Bucs here.
Yeah, vibes are shaky after that Week 18 performance by Dallas. I know that they probably assumed with the Giants having nothing to play for that the Eagles would win, so you're kind of – that mindset's a little thrown off of like, yeah, we're playing to try to get the division and even possibly a bye, but San Francisco going to lose to Arizona. Like there were just a few things that I don't necessarily take too much into account there. Whereas I think
2.5. I mean, this number's 2.5. Like it's a 12-5 team against an 8-9 team. It's only 2.5. Like
it's the Tom Brady factor. It's the Cowboys' lack of mystique recently, like you're saying, where they have a tendency to kind of blow it in these situations. I'm picking the Cowboys because I just think they're a better team. I'm still sticking with them having a performance that we haven't seen maybe in a little while. I'm trying to think if Dak's even won a playoff. I think he's won one playoff game in 2018 because they lost to the Rams in the divisional round, so they had to have gotten there through that. But otherwise, just some clunky games that could have gone either way, right? Like they've had some heartbreakers last year, obviously, with the not being able to spike the ball at the end, to have one more chance at the end zone. A number of things that even got to that circumstance. They lost that crazy game to the Packers in the divisional round. I think Dak's rookie year, where there's a long pass down the sideline to Jared Cook, the long field goal, and just crazy things that have happened in these games. They've been right on the cusp. I just think they're too good on defense. I think Tampa Bay's offense has, they've maybe figured some things out over the last couple weeks, but really at the totality of it all, that's maybe giving too much credit to Carolina's defense to say that they figured it out by putting up 31 or whatever in that game. This is a whole different unit that they're facing in Dallas, and yes, there maybe are some things they can exploit, but they defend I don't think Tampa's going to be able to run the ball against this unit. Tampa hasn't run the ball really well at all season. They're 30th in run offense DVOA. So Dallas can sit back, kind of know they're going to pass, and the line hasn't been as consistent as we know in years past. There's a reason that Tampa, is sitting with that 8-9 record. Could have been 9-8 if they had to play their starters last week, but still, Dallas is clearly, in my mind, the third best team in the NFC behind the Eagles and the Niners in some order. Probably would put the Niners maybe potentially at number one right now, but I just think they're a significantly better football team, and that's why I picked them. It was kind of that simple, but I understand from the Cowboys' point of view, our fan base point of view, why you'd have some concern, why there is concern. It's not like the offense has been perfect this year, but the numbers outside of Week 18 for Dak since he came back from I think Dallas was like before week 8 from week whatever 6, 7, whatever he came back through week 17, they were first in scoring or second in scoring. The offense efficiency numbers were ridiculous on both running and throwing. So I think they'll be okay. I think they're going to find a way. Their DVOA numbers are dragged down a bit by those games that Dak was out early in the year in week 1, and it's just a drastically different Tampa team than it's been in years past. All those things said, though, just watch it kind of be neck and neck. We're going to be like 13-10 late in the fourth quarter. If that's the formula, I think for Tampa, I think if there's points being scored in this game, I think it's Dallas that's going to end up pulling away.
Dylan, you know this by now. Tom Brady's never retiring, and this is going to be another game that just extends his career again. And I don't know. I think the Bucs. What is it? ESPN's FPI has the Bucs with a 2.7% chance to make the Super Bowl. So my Super Bowl pick is not happening. But I don't know why. I just get a sense that the Cowboys may be in that spot again, and I think they're the better team. And honestly, for the sake of the playoffs, I think the Cowboys. It'd be great if the Cowboys can win this game because I just feel like they're more of a challenge for the next round and opponent than the Bucs. But as we said, we got to pick some upsets somewhere, and I'll pick the Bucs here. So clearly, Dylan, I'm anti NFC East with our picks because the next pick for you're upset. The Giants are at the Vikings. Vikings are 3-point favorites in this one, and you're going with the Giants as your upset of the week. I want to stick with the Vikings here, but this is another one that I think, again, 3-point spread. If you look at the Vikings, we know kind of all the numbers and everybody talking about the Vikings this season and just kind of, some people certainly looking at them and not feeling like that they are a team perhaps strength-wise that matches the record. And meanwhile, the Giants, it's not always been pretty, but they have managed to get it done to get to this point. And so I'd be surprised, just like with the Bucs and Cowboys, although I think that one has a chance of getting out of hand, as you said, if the Cowboys really bring it. This one, I think, stays close no matter what. I'm kind of, and that's why maybe this is the better choice because I think there's a better chance perhaps this one stays closer, just given what we see from these teams. And again, what have we talked about the Giants all year long? Dylan, you know my phrase, good teams win, great teams cover. The Vikings may be 13-4 on the season, but the Giants are 13-4 against the spread. So if you're just looking to bet the spread, Giants seem like a good pick, but you're going to go all the way and pick them to win in Minnesota.
Yeah, I might as well just go the distance on this one, given it's only a few points. And how close they were to beating Minnesota just a few weeks ago. That game was actually a pretty fun one. I think that was a 61-yard field goal that Greg Joseph hit to deliver the win for Minnesota. It's kind of the story of the Vikings season. This game had sneaky game of the week potential, not because I think these are the best teams. They are, in fact, easily the two worst teams DVOA-wise, not even close, that are in the playoffs. The Vikings, I don't know the detail. Aaron Schatz, I'm sure at Football Outsider just tweeted out some of the details, and he has in the past about Minnesota and how historic it is for a team to be that low with this record. Their expected wins this season were 6.3. They have 13, as you mentioned. So it's and the Giants are only 21st in total DVOA. They're 6 spots above the 27th ranked Vikings. Their expected wins are only 7.2. So you're talking about two teams that have done great with what they've given. They've won close games. It's not like Minnesota hasn't beat good teams. They beat the Bills. It took Josh Allen fumbling a snap to make that happen, but they were right there in it regardless. They seem to play up to their competition when it's a solid opponent. They seem to play down to other teams. And the Giants, like you said, it's two teams that have found ways to win throughout the year. I do have concerns about the Giants' defense as I have throughout the season. I still think they're moving in the right direction. As we've talked about, no matter what happens this year with Dable in charge, it just feels like they have the right leadership to kind of keep this thing going and seeing what they're going to do moving forward. I think they're just some pieces on defense away from making it work. It's not like Minnesota's defense is that scary either, though. It's a team that they're 26th in pass defense DVOA, 19th against the run. Maybe that lines up a little bit better, given that the Giants are a team that's going to want to run the football, whether it be with Daniel Jones or their running backs. Flip side, though, Giants defense, the worst against the run in the league. And I know that Minnesota hasn't been perfect, but they still have some solid running backs. The offensive line, again, not perfect, but they are 13-4. So I don't blame, it's a coin flip game for me either way. I mentioned to you before we started recording, this is selfishly me wanting the matchups to play out a little bit differently in the next round. I'm intrigued by what the Giants did earlier in the year against the Eagles. And they lost that both cases, but obviously weren't playing anyone in Week 18. But even the first game was kind of close. I think they're just a kind of an interesting matchup there. And I just want a Dallas Niners playoff game, obviously. So that's kind of my picks are a little biased by what I'm hoping happens, I guess. Nothing against Minnesota. I would be very happy for the Vikings and their fan base and everything they've gone through for them to make a deep playoff run. And I hope, if they do win this game, that they would give San Francisco a good shot in the next round. But I'm going to side with the Giants in a close one. I think it just comes down to it's probably going to be whoever wins the turnover battle, honestly, because these teams otherwise are fairly, in my mind, evenly matched with the way they played earlier in this year, and I don't think it's going to be a whole lot different in this one.
Well, with our picks, I'm clearly looking for more chaos than you, because I picked 2 upsets. I think you picked 1 here with the just Giants and the Vikings. However, our final game, neither of us are going to expect chaos in this one, as our quick pick section, again, is made up of 1 game, and that is the Dolphins at the Bills. The Bills are 13.5-point favorites in this one, Dylan. I would not be surprised, in all honesty, if that number continues to go up. I don't think it'll get to 15 or anything like that, but I just think that it's very clear for a lot of people. The Bills, the favorites probably coming into this thing, and I think now, and we're not going to disregard the Chiefs as the top overall seed, but I think when you look at, again, the events of the past couple weeks, and I think there are a lot of people rooting for the Bills. The Dolphins will not be rooting for the Bills. But, I mean, look, no Tua officially. He will not play in this game. Skylar Thompson steps in for the Dolphins. It's just a different offense, as we know. And, look, they're on the road in Buffalo, going to be rocking. There's no way you're picking against the Bills. And in all honesty, like I said, I even entertained the thought of making this my betting lock. I just don't know how the Dolphins are able to make this much of a game, given who is on the field and who is not on the field, especially on the Dolphins side.
Yeah, the offense with Skylar Thompson has left a lot to be desired. Even with the talented players that they do have, there's only so much that has worked for them. And against this Buffalo defense in the conditions, obviously Tua's safety is the most important thing here. Can't rush him back from a concussion. It's not how it works. It's you can still believe that and also be disappointed, just given how good that matchup was on that Saturday night game that Tua did play in Buffalo, and how back and forth their first matchup of the year went, with the Dolphins winning that one. I mean, they had 2 of the best games of the regular season, probably 2, wherever you rank them, top 10, top 20, whatever it is. Just fantastic football, and now it's just a little bit interesting to think about what's going to happen with Miami. They do not match up as a defense. They're better against the run than the pass, as we know. With the Bills.
Let me give you this real quick, and you can take this wherever you want to. So, if you're just looking at the main categories, right? I had to look this up to compare the 2 teams. Points per game, Bills in favor of the Bills. Yards gained, Bills. Yards allowed, Bills. Time of possession, Bills. Red zone percentage, Bills. Kicking percentage, Bills. Penalties, Bills. I mean, the Bills have the advantage in every large statistical category here. So that also doesn't help if you're the Dolphins. So.
No. I mean, and they, with Tua in that offense, they were at least probably comparable enough there, and that was kind of why they stayed in those games. They were able to still put up points against Buffalo. Without him, it's not going to happen, as we've seen. So this is the most lopsided playoff game here. I honestly maybe should have switched my lock to this. ESPN's Football Power Index has this as a 96.3% win for Buffalo. That is I think it's the highest I've seen all year, let alone a playoff game. That's obviously taking into account that Tua was ruled out on Wednesday. So, man, I wanted to be excited for this one, but I'll be watching. But there's a chance that Buffalo just pulls away pretty early in this one. The only way that, if Miami's able to stay in it, they probably have to force turnovers. They probably have to do something on that side of the football, because as we saw the other side against a good Jets defense, and now facing a likely even better Bills defense, it's not going to look pretty. They're going to struggle to score points, and stopping Josh Allen is a big task, as we know. So I would be pretty confident that we're going to see that Bills-Bengals rematch in the next round. Both games, given that with Lamar and Tua both not playing, games that potentially, when you looked at the playoff field, looked really fun and still could be, at least the Baltimore-Cincinnati one, but Now I feel pretty good about those two teams moving forward and facing each other in the divisional round.
Yeah, it's really a shame that the Chiefs, Bills, and Bengals can't somehow all just give me has there been just a three-way football game just somehow play it out that way, because again, knowing that one of those teams will be eliminated before the championship round, but that it's kind of fun though, because again that tells you kind of where, I mean, again, the Chiefs are where they are, the Bills have gotten where they've gotten to, the Bengals get to the Super Bowl, they're clearly building something. It's kind of fun now where I feel like there were some years there where you had, it was kind of mixing and matching. Some teams maybe didn't have the consistency, but now that you do have, it feels like these three teams, and we're not knocking anybody else, but these three teams, again, man, knowing one of them will not be in the championship game of the AFC, it's just, there's going to be a really good team that's not going to be in there. And so, yeah, that kind of is the state of where things. Let me ask you this real quick. Yeah. We'll have some fun. I mean, let me ask you, and of course we know logistically what if the Patriots or the Steelers were in this game against the Bills, would the point spread be lower?
I think it would be lower, but not by much. I'd say Patriots would be minus 11. Yeah. Pittsburgh maybe 10.5 or something.
I was gonna say, yeah. I was gonna say, I don't know. I feel like the Patriots maybe would be the lowest just because of the defense, but
they did just play well last week.
Yeah, so I feel like that would probably be the team with the lowest, but that's what we're saying. Here's a better question. With Tua, what? I don't know. It's different, right? But in all honesty, I still think the Bills will be a double-digit favorite. Maybe 9.5 or 10. I still feel like they would be. I don't know.
They played each other tough again. I think that spread for that Saturday night game, I would have to go back and look, but I thought it was 6.5, 7. I think that's maybe where it would end up being. Just you'd think with the conditions and Buffalo and their defense, they are significantly better in the overall rankings, but that offense for Miami is so explosive, and they did have an ability against Buffalo's secondary to make some plays. So with Tua, that spread significantly drops, I believe. It's just crazy how that's the position, that's the nature of it. But from what you were saying about the three teams at the top, I mean, there's a chance within a year or two, it's those three teams plus who knows if the Chargers keep building up under Herbert, or we're talking about the Jags and even Miami with Tua. There's a chance we have four, one more juggernaut that joins this group, and then it's just brutal considering, as we've talked about this a number of times, that you look at the NFC, quarterbacking, and not just in these playoffs, but overall, and it seems like every year the team that gets the number one pick against a really good young guy is the AFC. Maybe Justin Fields changes that narrative pretty soon with the Bears and some of the other players we have there, but it's just such a dichotomy between the two. It's striking me. And Brock Purdy would like to have a word, I guess, at this moment as well. Jalen Hurts as well.
And look, if we're looking ahead, right? I mean, Packers didn't make the playoffs, but we know that uncertainty with Aaron Rodgers. Where does he go? Bucs, you're going to assume they're not going to have Tom Brady next season, so you factor that in. Things become a lot more unpredictable on the NFC side. Whereas again, with the AFC, I mean, I think it's as long as the nucleus is in place for the Chiefs, Bills, and Bengals, and like you said, maybe the Chargers get there if they make a run in the playoffs this season, going into next season, but they're not going anywhere. It's just not going to happen. And, I think you could put the Ravens, if Lamar comes back healthy next season and, he goes back there and, the Ravens are back there in that same mix probably again, just given the structure of the defense. And, it just and I don't look – and I don't think you can discount the Dolphins. If the Dolphins get Tua back healthy and, like we said, they were kind of cruising along a little bit, but they've got some gaps they've got to fill in the offseason. And, the dynamic has gotten really interesting on both sides. So that should set up for an interesting wild card weekend here with some very interesting games on tap, as we said. Of course, Dylan, have it all covered over Clutch Points, everything you need, previews, recaps. It'll all be there so everybody know where they can find all of that.
You can follow all the playoff games in the Clutch Points app. Lots of news coverage in there as well. We'll have betting predictions for every game, bold predictions on for every team, X factors for every team. All that good stuff will be in the NFL section of the app, as well as NFL section of ClutchPoints.com. Any news updates, injury stuff, we'll be following all along. Obviously, if you're not a fan of these teams, tons of coverage. We got lots of looking at early free agent targets, looking at possible trades ahead of the draft and ahead of free agency for all the teams that are eliminated. So all that good stuff will be available on our site as well pretty soon.
Yep, check it out there. And as always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Any podcast app you use, search for Establish the Pass. Thanks as always for listening to the podcast, and we'll talk to you next time here on the Establish the Pass podcast.